story starts in a time long before most, when Ash was a few months old. Ash Ketchum's father is preparing to leave for his Pokemon journey. The second one, at the very least. However, as he goes to tell his newlywed wife, he receives a massive headache. He was going to abandon her with a newborn baby? Oh, hell no. Delia Ketchum was not about to be a widow at the age of 19. Yeah, no, Delia grabbed this man by the ear and nearly yanked it off. And thus, Ash's father, Dad Ketchum as we will call him, had not died in a random ditch somewhere in Kanto like what likely happened in canon. This massively changes things for the better. Not only is Delia having an easier life, well, she's cooking for 3 people now, but ignoring that, Ash has more experience. His dad will be there to teach him things that he didn't in canon. Not exactly the best experience, but it's experience. Growing up, Ash would learn how to actually catch Pokemon, various type matchups, though not all of them, as he wouldn't be able to experience all of them. For example, his dad is very unlikely to have run into a Steel type or a Fairy type. And he'd learn how to enter the league he was watching literally the night before his journey. Unlike in canon. Pretty crazy how that works, isn't it? Dad Ketchum is a very complicated character to write. We really don't know anything about him in canon, aside from the fact that he had a Rapidash, and that it took him a week to get to Viridian City. I may have missed some other information. Do tell if there's any official source down below in the comments if I did. However, to my knowledge, that's it. And he's never mentioned more than 2 or 3 times throughout the franchise. So, in this story, here's what we're going to say. Dad Ketchum is a 30-year-old man by the time Ash is 10 who didn't make it to the Pokemon League. Dad Ketchum goes through 6 out of the 8 gym badges by the time the Pokemon League had come around originally. And by originally, I mean himself. And instead of continuing his journey, he decided to just live with his Pokemon and, of course, his eventual wife, of which Dad Ketchum had 4 of them. 4 Pokemon. 4 Pokemon, not 4 wives. 4 Pokemon. He didn't have 4 wives. He had 4 Pokemon. A Rapidash, Tauros, Growlithe, and Farfetch'd. You know the theme? You know the theme. And just because of how funny how badly I wrote that down, I'm gonna keep that in here. If you want me to leave these out, let me know and I'll do it in the future. But I thought that was really funny. Approaching Ash's 9th birthday, his dad realizes he hasn't really done much for Ash, and thus he leaves for a couple months on a journey. And when he comes back, he refuses to tell them what the purpose of his journey was, even though he was gone for a couple of months, but he tells them that it went better than it was supposed to. And thus, Ash doesn't learn, for another year, what the purpose of this journey his father went on was. On the day of Ash's 10th birthday, however, Ash comes upon a realization that he indeed woke up late. This is because the father and son are both naive and like to sleep in, and since Dad was supposed to wake up his son in time to go get his Pokemon, Delia chews him out as well. But that's okay. Dad Ketchum is big brain, and he had a plan. A big plan. So, Dad Ketchum, as we're going to call him, takes Ash up to Professor Oak's house after changing, because he doesn't want his son going out in his pajamas, where Gary leaves a note to antagonize Ash. This makes Ash angry, but his dad tells him to calm down. Oak and Dad Ketchum would lead Ash into the lab and hand him a Pokeball. This Pokemon was something Dad Ketchum, who we will now just call Dad, just found on his journey a couple of months ago when he turned 9. It was for Ash, but Oak had to study the Pokemon just in case he never got the chance again. Out of the Pokeball came a majestic Pokemon, a beautiful Ponyta with a beautiful blue flame covering its body. Ash is amazed at this Pokemon. He'd never seen a Ponyta, let alone a blue flamed Ponyta before, only a Rapidash. That's where Professor Oak would explain that this is a shiny Pokemon, and that they were extremely rare, even among common Pokemon, Pidgey or Adam. Ash was ecstatic to have such a rare Pokemon, and his dad was happy he was lucky enough to find it in his Pokemon journey. Ash's Ponyta was quiet yet brave and bold Pokemon, who wasn't comfortable with being touched. Though she was tamed, she would let her trainer do so without problems, to a certain extent, of course. She was also a bit spoiled and pampered, so she expected to be treated like a princess when they're on their breaks. Ash made his way onto Route 1 after receiving his starter supplies and took a look around. Ash had a conflict immediately. On one hand, he wanted to capture a lot of Pokemon, and yeah, it was good to have lots of Pokemon, because you have a lot of answers for a lot of various situations. But on the other hand, more Pokemon means more split training. It was something he had to think about, and he was walking around. However, all he saw were Pidgeys, really. But a Pidgey was better than no Pokemon. Ash knew quite well what a Pidgey was, and he decided that he should battle the said Pokemon. After all, gotta start somewhere. Sending out his Ponyta to charge the Pidgey, Ash commanded that Ponyta would use Ember to attack the bird. Ponyta, however, missed the attack, causing bird Pokemon to fly away in fear. Ash was bewildered, but put it up to bad luck. We all have our bad embers. Sort of. So, he tried again on a Rattata, where the same thing happened. He then tried on a Sandshrew. It happened again. 3 times the charm, but also 3 times the failure. Ash had come to the conclusion that Ponyta's aim was quite poor, to say the least. Ash also realized that this would have to be a thing he trained on, and was pretty sure that whoever got Charmandered did not have to deal with this. A little unfair, but he supposed that's the consequences for getting such a rare and spoiled Pokemon. As Ash was going through the fields of Route 1, he saw another bird, much more fat, round bird. This bird was a rare Pokemon around here, and he did not quite remember due to how little he saw it. After checking his Pokedex though, he saw that it was a Starly, a Pokemon from the Sinnoh region mostly. It was on the other side of the mountains, opposite of Johto. Whereas Johto was right next to them, Sinnoh was above them. So that made sense why they'd migrate over here a little bit. Ash decided that this one would not get away, however. He was going to have at least one more Pokemon before he left Route 1. Ash had Ponyta run forward and use Stomp on the bird Pokemon. Ponyta's foot slammed down on the bird, which was caught very off guard. At point blank range, Ponyta then used Ember, doing heavy damage. Ash then threw a Pokeball and caught the said bird Pokemon, securing his first capture. Ash and Ponyta were quite happy in securing this Pokemon, and gladly introduced Starly to the group of, well, a group of 3 now. It was just a duo before. Now it's a group. They would be good friends. We know that much for certain. Yeah, good friends. Ash Ketchum made it to Viridian City by the end of the night. He had his Pokemon healed and got a room for the night. Afterwards, he called his mother and Professor Oak. They're both proud of him for what he's accomplished, and of course, his dad is too. It took him a week to reach Viridian City. Not Forest. Viridian City. After ending the call, Ash would see a girl picking up their Pokemon at the same time as he was picking up his. They would introduce themselves, and Ash would meet the nice girl quite fondly, unlike in canon. As he shows his Pokemon, she absolutely adores his Ponyta, who is quite beautiful. However, similar to Pikachu in canon, and also unsimilarly, Ponyta has a quirk I mentioned in the first episode. Ponyta does not like being touched. That's a big no-no for Ponyta. So as Misty tries to pet the Ponyta, its flames burst and she burns her hand. This makes Misty react in the same way she normally does, being a loud, obnoxious brat. Though I suppose we can give her the benefit of the doubt this time. Of course, Nurse Joy would have to break up the fight. You see, Ash is still stubborn, and while Ponyta shouldn't burn anyone, Misty wouldn't listen, so she got what was coming to her. However, during this argument, there was an explosion of smoke. inside the building. Quite unfortunate. Team Rocket appears in the Pokemon Center. Ash already had out his Ponyta, which Team Rocket was more than keen on stealing, a shiny Ponyta. That's an amazing find. Being a 2-on-1, however, Misty jumps in. And by the way, I'm changing things up here, so let's talk for a moment. Okay, so like everyone should know by now that I don't like Misty, but let's ignore my bias and hatred of this redhead for just a moment. Misty sent out Goldeen in the original, okay? Why? Why did she not use her Staryu, a Pokemon who can fight on land? I mean, I know why. The creators didn't think up of her having a Staryu yet. But in lore, why not? Since we're using hindsight in this story, we're going to have her use her Staryu because in lore, it doesn't make any sense for her to use a Pokemon who can't even battle on land inside a Pokemon Center. Plus, I mean, this is Goldeen we're talking about. Who used a Goldeen or Seeping was like, wow, what a great Pokemon. Ash was going to order an Ember attack, but remembered Ponyta's aim, so he had Ponyta engage in physical combat with Ekans. Ponyta used Stomp, but Ekans wrapped itself around Ponyta. Ponyta used its body's in size to slam it into the side of the Pokemon Center wall, hurting Ekans more than itself. Eventually, Ekans let go and used Bite on Ponyta's neck. What Ekans wasn't expecting was to be burned by the Flame Body ability. Ponyta then finally landed a Slam attack, once again, and finished the Ekans off. Meanwhile, Misty used Water Gun to hit Coughing. Coughing was able to land some strong sludge attacks, but after a war of attrition, Misty gained the edge. Team Rocket growled and warned that they would be back before leaving in a hurry. Once again, they had to have their Pokemon healed and find everything to Officer Jenny, but since they were defending themselves, they had not gotten into any trouble. The next day, Ash and Misty would be heading the same way, but Misty made it very clear that she would not be walking through Viridian Forest, so she rode her bike straight through it as fast as she could. Ash was confused though. He loved bugs. Thus, Ash made his way into Viridian Forest. Inside the forest, he quite easily catches a Caterpie, and the events with Team Rocket more or less go the same, causing it to evolve into Metapod. From there, Ash would go and run into Samurai, who has nothing to do with being a samurai other than his stupid outfit. In the beginning, does indeed have the most intense match in Pokemon battling history, in the anime, in the movies, in the video games. There is not a match more intense than Metapod versus Metapod. So don't worry, that still does happen. I got you. Don't say SMDBZX didn't do anything for you, because he did. After that very hard battle, though, Samurai sends out Pinsir. Ash realizes Pinsir will catch the smoke, and decides that Pinsir should have some instead. I just realized I wrote Pinsir will catch the smoke. I meant Metapod, but you know what? I don't care. I'm not re-recording this. Okay, I'm really tired. So Ash sends out Ponyta, and we ignore the fact that I said Pinsir twice. Yeah, Ponyta's aim sucks, and its physical stature is lesser than Pinsir. But that stature is exactly what allows Ponyta to hit Pinsir. Ponyta is quite easily able to outpace Pinsir, firing Ember attacks as the Pinsir is burnt with a barrage of attacks. Eventually, Samurai concedes, calling it a defeat and sending out his other Pokemon, Beedrill. Hi there, postscript SMDBZX here. So I realized I wrote Beedrill instead of Scyther on number 9. So, yeah, just pretend I said Scyther, okay? Yeah, after defeating Pinsir, Scyther is the one who came out, whose dog is barking right outside my freaking window. Ash returns his tired Ponyta and sends out Starly. While Starly does his best, he is still doubleless and is defeated by Scyther. So Ash sends out Ponyta again. Scyther is too fast for Ember, so Ponyta resorts into bashing the Scyther again, and hoping she can endure. Unfortunately, she could not, and Ash has to return her. That leaves Metapod, the man, the myth, the legend himself, who was able to defeat Scyther. Hardened made it too hard to hurt. String Shot made Scyther unable to move, and Tackle would eventually whittle down the weakened Pokemon. Afterwards, Metapod would evolve into a Butterfree, and Samurai is defeated after Butterfree defeats his Metapod. Crazy how that works. After the battle, Samurai and Ash began to talk, and they decided to rest in his shack. Uncomfortable, but safe from the elements and the Beedrill. As they were talking, Ash asked about his Pokemon. Samurai explained his 2 bug types and a 3rd one. Breeding Forest had been in a territorial war. Pinsir, Scyther, and Heracross. Scyther had the advantage due to it being flying type, but Heracross were in friendly terms with the Butterfree, which made them the dominant species. Ash was ecstatic to hear about such Pokemon, and decided he had to catch one. Samurai would be glad to show him the way. It was a slight detour from Pewter City, but Ash felt it was all the more worth it. Hey there, did you know that? A, I have a Discord server. I love to chat to everyone, so please come by. I need friends. B, I have another YouTube channel for gaming, which I often, at times, rarely never even, live stream. Though, lately it's been really Gundam focused, so, there's that. And C, I have a Patreon, so you can support me. I'm poor. This is not a joke. The joke is non-existence. This is a robbery. Put the Poké Dollars in the bag. SMDBZX, don't you dare cut me off before I can force them. Ash Ketchum made his way through the off path. Technically, it still led to Pewter, but took longer due to the Pokemon. You'd see multiple Pinsir at first, but slowly that turned into them fighting Heracross. Both were strong Pokemon worth capturing, but he wasn't really going to try to catch 2 of them at once. So he made his way past them looking for a Heracross by itself, and to be honest, he had to look up what a Heracross was. He wasn't quite aware of how many Pokemon were not considered Cantonian. Ash continuing his walking, he came across a sight. Heracross finding a Scyther. The Scyther had the edge and slashed downwards on the blue Pokemon. The Heracross, however, leaped upwards with its horn, sending it flying into a tree and bouncing off. Unlike the other battles, that Scyther was very weak. It was not going to defend itself anymore. He was not going to let that opportunity go to waste. So he threw a Pokeball at the Scyther and caught it. It scared the Heracross, who didn't know what was going on, but as soon as he saw Ash sending out his Ponyta, well, he decided to engage. Heracross stood its ground, more than ready to fight its opponent. Ash wasn't going to fight using the injured Scyther, and instead sent out Ponyta. This was Ponyta's chance to practice its Ember attack. However, its accuracy was still quite poor. Ash hadn't exactly had time to train in the forest, after all. Ponyta had difficulty actually hitting the target, as per usual, but one good shot was enough to take down the injured Heracross. Ash proceeded to then catch the Pokemon, and then cheered excitedly. Both Ash's Heracross and Scyther were strong, and he had 5 Pokemon now. However, a thought did occur to him. For starters, he had 3 bug types on his team, and second, he already had 5 Pokemon. He wasn't quite sure how to effectively train yet, so having this many Pokemon would probably be more of a hindrance than it was helpful. He would have to think about this more once he made it to Pewter. Ash made it out of the forest and into Pewter by the next day, making twice as much progress as his dad, more, by the time he had reached Radiant City. He risked his Pokemon at the Pokemon Center and called everyone, letting them know how he was doing. Oak was excited at his rare Scyther and Heracross, though 2 of them didn't get along, which was a problem. His dad and mom were excited he got so far and wished him good luck in his gym battle. Ash then realized there was a gym here, a rock-type gym. Closest thing he had to a type-50 Pokemon was Heracross, who was a fighting type. All of his other Pokemon were weak to rock. Since 3 of them were flying types, Ash didn't really see a reason to have Scyther around, so he sent to Professor Oak. Now, you may think he should have gotten rid of Butterfree. However, Butterfree has utility that Scyther does not. Well enough. After resting for the day, Ash headed out to Brock's gym. Inside, Brock waited for him and asked him various questions. How long has he been in training? What did he know exactly? And Brock was fairly certain Ash couldn't win just by the answer to those questions. Ash opposed this, however, challenged him anyways. Starting off with Butterfree to fight Geodude. The combination of stats, effects, and confusion was enough to beat the Pokemon, but not without taking some heavy damage. Butterfree wasn't exactly a tanky Pokemon. However, he wasn't able to beat Onix after the battle. Afterwards, he used Heracross to fight the Big Rock Snake, but unfortunately with no battle experience, or experience with Heracross in general, he was unable to beat Onix. Thus, his first gym battle ended in defeat. Ash has his Pokemon recover, and then derives the fact that he lost because he has no experience with Heracross. Due to this, he trains his Pokemon out in the routes nearby. Heracross was a pretty lax Pokemon, but he could still take and dish out hits. Butterfree, on the other hand, as friendly as he was and adorable, was not able to take hits like his spirits could. It was a tight situation, but it's not like Ponyta's fire attacks would have done any better. After resting once again, Ash re-entered the Pewter Gym, ready to challenge the rock-hard gym leader once again. His strategy was more or less the same as before, though. Starting with the round off with Butterfree, using his stats, afflictions, and confusion to swiftly defeat Geodude. Butterfree would then return this time, and Heracross would come face-to-face with Onix. Onix's size over Heracross was tough to deal with. However, it was also a weakness. Heracross would use Horn Attack to knock over the Onix before attacking its own horn with an arm thrust. This hurt a lot, but Onix was able to push back with Heracross with the whack of its tail. Heracross then stood up, used Endure to handle a tackle attack, before counterattacking with another arm thrust. After the battle, Brock congrababuzz him on his victory and gets his Boulder Badge. Ash was extremely happy and celebrated with his Pokemon. The next day, after a nice meal, a good rest, and another congrababuzz from his parents and grandpa, he set out to continue his journey out to Mount Moon. Ash Ketchum makes his way towards Mount Moon. With his recent victory over Brock, he is confident. But as he's walking towards Mount Moon, a wave of Zubats fly out of the cave. Now you might be thinking, Ash has 3 flying types, so he won't catch this because he's a competent trainer. But that's where you're wrong. Because I'm the writer, I get to say what he does. No, I'm just kidding. You have to remember that while Ash is a lot smarter here, one might say competent, he's still the same guy who wants to catch a bunch of different Pokemon. Like, just no matter what. You also have to remember that in the anime, having more Pokemon makes you considered a more skilled trainer. At least early on in the series. Later on in Nova, they made it to where having more Pokemon switched out in your party was a bad thing, but we aren't there yet, are we? Plus, Ash can have his Pokemon train at Oak's lab. Another thing that he seems to have forgotten, but, you know, whatever. Ash attempts to catch a Zubat, but is cut off by Seymour. Ash is rather angry at this, but shrugs it off. Whatever. From here, the episode goes pretty much the same as usual. It'd be more difficult since Ash is alone and does not have Misty or Brock with him, but it would end up the same nonetheless. The reason Brock is not with him, in case you don't remember, is Ash never needed the help of Brock's deadbeat dad. So, yeah, Brock stays home, taking care of his siblings for the rest of his life. Poor guy's never gonna get his Mega Steelix. As we start talking about episode 7, I want to quickly again just apologize if you hear my nose, because again, my sinuses are kicking up. Anyway, Ash would then arrive at Cerulean City, where he is looking to take on the Cerulean City Gym. Unlike in canon, Misty had her bike, so you might think that she would be at the gym. However, you would again be incorrect. That's twice, 2 episodes in a row. Shame on you, by the way. For you see, Misty does not want to go back to Cerulean. If she heard they were giving out badges, she probably would. But in this case, she does not. This means Ash was given a badge instead. If you remember in canon, Misty tried her darnest to get Ash and Brock to go somewhere else. It's kind of crazy, but I know it is what it is. Ash is quite upset at the fact that he's just being given a badge. However, there is nothing he could do about it since they refused to battle him. And thus Ash left Cerulean City without a gym battle. That also means that the gym gets robbed by Team Rocket, which would get them off Ash's back since they have to go get the Pokemon to the boss. So Ash is given a gym badge for free. However, he trades it for not having to deal with Team Rocket ever again. Some would consider this a win-win situation. After Ash Ketchum fails to get his badge fairly, he goes on to get a series of wins. 10, if I remember correctly. On the way, Ash beats 10 different Pokemon trainers. So there you go, I just read it out loud. And Ponyta learns Flame Charge, Starly Double Team, and Heracross Endure. As Ash is beating trainers, he is taunted by one of the trainers about AJ. And of course, Ash was not going to take this lying down. So he strolls up to AJ's fake gym and challenges him too. AJ sends out his Sandshrew, and Ash sends out Butterfree. Just like in canon, he loses. However, unlike in canon, Team Rocket is not here. So Ash learns some training techniques, but disagrees with them. However, if he gets desperate, you never know. Maybe in the future we'll see a bit of a different Ash Ketchum. We'll just have to see, won't we? We skip episode 9 and go on to episode 10. Now, it's very questionable if this episode does happen. However, Brock is a very reliable guy. If he trusts Ash with directions, that must mean that Ash had to be very convincing and confident. So, since all of you want this episode to happen in the series, I'm just gonna do it anyways. Ash, while going through the forest and taking a, quote, shortcut, would find an Oddish out on a field near a pond. Ash would send out his Ponyta and challenge the Pokemon so he could capture it. He has yet to capture a grass type after all. Ash damages the Oddish, but before he can catch the Oddish, Bulbasaur appears and defends it. Ash would be overjoyed at the fact there is a Bulbasaur, completely forgetting about the Oddish and changing his Ponyta's focus to Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur was definitely stronger than the Oddish, but Ash ended up catching the Bulbasaur since Ponyta not only had a speed boost from Flame Charge, but, well, super effective stab damage. What's Bulbasaur going to do? Ash would later run into the caretaker of the village, who I cannot remember the name of at this moment, of writing the script, and Ash would feel bad. However, even though Ash tries to give Bulbasaur back to the woman explains that he's been here for far too long, and that Ash doesn't seem like a bad guy. So, Ash leaves with Bulbasaur in hand. Of course, him and Bulbasaur would need to work on their relationship a little bit. It's not as wanted as in canon, but again, you know, I think in the end it'll work out. Bulbasaur's a pretty cool guy after all. Oh boy, we're on the Charmander episode, and honestly, probably the most anticipated episode yet of this series. Some of you were sitting there shaking your boots going, it's Charmander's canon event, guys. It's the SMDBZX canon event. What are we gonna do? And you know, you see me, I'm sitting there, like I'm holding a gun and I'm looking at Charmander with something fierce in my eyes. So before we talk about episode 11, I think we need to talk about this for those who might not be understanding what I'm talking about and why the Charmander episode is a, quote, canon event, end quote. So I know I got more subs when I originally uploaded this remake, and of course I've gotten even more subs after uploading the Ben 10 series. By the way, thank you for 1,000 subscribers. Let's get it. Next year, I'm hoping for 2,000. That might be a small goal, but you know what? I'll take what I can get, okay? I'm an easy guy to please. Sometimes. But, let me tell you, all you people, many people were not happy with me in the original series because of this episode. In the original version of this series, rest its soul, because it did not deserve the treatment I gave it, I had actually killed Charmander. Simply put, Charmander has the most plot armor in the whole franchise, and you cannot change my mind. Realistically, he should have died on this episode. In fact, Charizard should have died in the Orange Islands because of the treatment he was getting from that freaking Poliwrath that one time. And, well, a lot of people were upset with this. They refused to accept the facts and realism I was dropping down. In other words, they were coping. So, what about this time? What's going to happen in this series? Is SMDBZX about to commence a canon event on this Charmander? Well, Miguel's going to be rather pissed off because I'm actually breaking the canon. I'm going to do things my own way. Well, you guys are going to do things your own way. That reference didn't work out as well as I creased out. Charmander's going to live, okay? That's the point. Charmander's living, okay? Got it? Understand? Good. As Ash is walking along the route, he runs into Charmander on a tree trunk. He tries to catch the lizard, but fails. But since Brock and Misty aren't here to demotivate him, he sends out Ponyta. After all, if it's deflecting the Pokeball, just beat the crap out of it until you can catch it, right? That's how Pokemon works. You beat Pokemon until you can shove them in your Pokeball. He's not doing anything wrong, guys. Ponyta weakens the Pokemon even further, and then he throws the Pokeball to capture Charmander. He has Nurse Joy check on the Pokemon, and she explains that it's very unhealthy. Unfed, injured, etc. Ash explains that he just caught it outside the Pokemon Center, and this leaves them wondering why a Pokemon would just be sitting there on a tree trunk. Ash would then appear about the D-bag who released Charmander. Ash would ridicule the trainer for this decision, and Ash would challenge him to a battle. The next morning, because, it was nighttime and raining, Damien would send out his Growler, and Ash would send out his newly caught Charmander. Damien then begins to beat the tar out of the Fire Lizard with Growler, and left the Fire Lizard confused. Ash would then explain to Charmander that if Damien actually cared about him, then why is he beating the tar out of him instead of just taking him back peacefully? Charmander comes to understand that Damien does not care about him at all, and proceeds to effortlessly defeat the doggo Pokemon. Damien would then try to take Charmander back, but was flamethrowered, leaving Ash with his Charmander and it not being dead. Everyone wins, guys. Next, we move on to episode 12. As Ash is traveling through the road, Squirtle Squad would engage Ash Ketchum. Of course, he'd be cut off by Officer Jenny, and then they all skedaddle because it's the police. Afterwards, he goes to relax by a lake, but he would be interrupted by the Squirtles. This time, though, he is ready. He proceeds to catch all of the Squirtle by jumping them. You see, they wouldn't just allow one of their own to get captured, so they tried to jump Bulbasaur. But then Ash said, nah, they about to jump, and so he sent out his squad. Now, Ponyta and Charmander are at a weakness, but they can double team one of the Squirtle. It'll be fine. The Squirtle didn't stand a chance. If they just would have skedaddled, everything would have been fine. But no, they decided to jump, and Ash was like, I ain't about that life. I really need to stop going off script. It's not good for my videos, probably. Would be at this time Ash realizes the potency of his party. I'm not editing that out because I don't feel like it's 30 minutes till midnight. I recorded all this in one go, by the way. Are you impressed with me yet? There are 2 fire types, 2 bug types, and 2 flying types on his team. One of his Pokemon being 2 of those categories. So in town, he takes out Butterfree and Charmander, and takes the strongest Squirtle on his squad. Or of the squad, that's what I meant to say. This Squirtle would not be so happy, because it was abandoned by his trainer, but just like Bulbasaur, he too would learn to enjoy his time with Ash Ketchum on the road, and he won with the team. We continue our story by going over episode 13. Ash would still catch the Krabby in this episode, and Ash wouldn't be worried, but he would still want to call Professor Oak to check on Scyther, Squirtle, and Krabby. Due to Team Rocket not being around, Bill's actually able to get some research on the giant Dragonite, and they can learn more about it. However, because that's a ship that I am not willing to go sailing, we're just going to ignore it. We're just pretend that it happened, but we're not going to focus on it at all in this what if. Just letting you guys know ahead of time. Anyway, he proceeds to switch Butterfree for Scyther, and Heracross for Squirtle, and Charmander for Krabby. They are 2 different water types, but Ash needs to get to know his Pokemon if he wants to use them. Episode 14, the episode that screwed over the Red Eyes Ash series. And I might as well just fast forward this section, because it's pretty much the same in every what if. Ash fights Raichu with his Ponyta, and he fails, so he trains his Pokemon, and he comes back after Ponyta learns Agility, and in combination with Flame Charge, and since it's now a higher level, Ponyta defeats Lieutenant Surge. Pretty simple. It's pretty it happens the same every what if. But really, I should honestly just start skipping the Lieutenant Surge fight, since it always ends up the same. Because Team Rocket isn't around, we skipped a lot of episodes. In fact, the series from here on out becomes more or less completely different from the actual series, because Ash does not get on the boat. You know, he doesn't get on the SSN. So, for the sake of me not having a map of the anime, we are going to... Oh man. That's a yawn. That's a yawn. We are going to be following the game's map for simplicity. Ash makes his way through Route 11 to 15, learning more and more about his Pokemon. Krabby and Scyther are a bit angry and disobedient at times, but they're more obedient than Charizard and Ganon, so Ash can deal with it. At this time, Bulbasaur would also start to grow in Ash more, slowly getting over his grudge of being captured back in the Hidden Village. Squirtle is more hesitant, but he's also slowly getting to see how Ash is actually a kind guy and confident. However, Ash would notice something in particular. Krabby's potential was through the roof. Krabby very quickly became on the same power level as Ponyta, and you should be seeing the order of the strength they're in now. I think this is fair, because you saw what Ash's Krabby did in canon. So, yeah, we better hope Krabby doesn't stick around very long, or Ash is gonna have a Charizard incident, if you get what I'm saying. Ash finds Fuchsia City Gym on the map, and makes his way there. Like in the anime, it's a bunch of shenanigans until he meets Koga himself, and they decide to battle. Now, this is where things get interesting, because Ash is early. He got here earlier than intended. I personally don't think Koga's Venonat would evolve. Either way, it doesn't really matter, because I think we both know where this fight is going. Instead of using Ponyta, Ash decides to give Starly a shot. It's super effective against Venonat. It's a chance to give someone else the glory, and Ash can always come back tomorrow and try again, right? Venomoth tried to use his tackle attack, but Starly would elegantly dodge and counter with its own. Venonat then uses Double Team, but Starly uses its own to match. When the double teams ended, however, Starly was hit as its double team was not as effective as the Venonat's. Starly then used a super effective wing attack, dealing massive damage. But the bird Pokemon was not ready for a Stun Spore, making it have to stop and evade instead of hitting a second attack. this was enough time to let Venonat get an attack with a strong tackle. Suddenly, Starly began to grow brightly. It began growing large in size, and Ash is ecstatic as he's only seen this technically 2 times, but 1 other time. Starly's evolved into Staravia. Staravia stands up strongly and flies around the room at increased speed. Venonat attempts to use Sleep Powder, but Staravia uses Whirlwind to push it back into Venonat. And since it's a 1v1, it isn't switched out. Ashen orders a wing attack, but instead, Staravia uses its newly learned Aerial Ace instead to hit the bug poison type. The super effective damage, along with Staravia's increased power, is enough to knock out Koga's Pokemon, leading in Ash's earning... Ashes? We're just gonna leave that in. Leading in that Ash has earned his Soul Badge. Once making his way to Fuchsia, due to using Staravia, he switched him out for Heracross. He's keeping his Pokemon on rotation, but aside from that, nothing significant happens in Fuchsia City. Also, another thing I'd like to mention is that we are not bringing up the Safari Zone in this What If. Simply put, I see no reason to. Ash would either be comically inconsistent compared to his non-competent self, or Ash would have a bunch of Pokemon that he's not going to use. So we're just going to skip the Safari Zone because I don't see a reason to do so. Ash then has to make his way all the way back up through Route 15 to 11, once again since he does not have a bike. Needless to say, Ash is visually behind on his journey compared to Canon Ash. But that's okay, because he's already ahead of him in terms of strength despite the lower evolutions. Deciding he didn't want to travel through Vermilion again, Ash decided to travel through Lavender Town instead. Once there, he hears about Ghost-type Pokemon over in Lavender Tower. So Ash makes his way there, and through all the smoke and broken graves, he runs to Ghost-type Pokemon, specifically Misdreavus. Remember, it doesn't affect Misdreavus. Ash uses Squirtle's ranged water attacks to weaken the Pokemon. However, the Misdreavus is not a Pokemon to be underestimated. Ash throws a Pokeball, capturing it. Afterwards, he heads to the Pokemon Center to heal Squirtle and call Professor Oak about the said Pokemon. Upon then realizing the next gym was a Psychic-type gym, he switched out Squirtle for the new Misdreavus. Ash KETCHUM approaches Sabrina's gym. He switched Squirtle out for Misdreavus, and he had 2 bug types. Oh, one of them was a fighting type, so that was less helpful. Ash enters the building and prepares to fight Sabrina. At first, everything seems normal, until Sabrina turns out to be batshit crazy. Ash starts off with his Heracross as Sabrina sends out Abra. With its weak physical power and weakness to Pin Missile from Heracross, it was swiftly defeated. Next, Sabrina sends out Kadabra. Kadabra uses a powerful Psychic attack, knocking Heracross away. Heracross gets up and uses Horn Attack, but then Kadabra uses Recover. Heracross uses another Pin Missile. Before he could finish the attack, Kadabra used Psychic again, along with another Recover. Ash then uses his Scyther, which he has not done outside of training in the series so far, even though he's had it for so long. So he was pretty worried, but Scyther pulled his weight. He started with a powerful Fury Cutter, doing more damage with each hit. As Kadabra uses Recover, Scyther uses Quick Attack and interrupts the healing, and finishes it off. Sabrina then uses Alakazam. Its Psychic attacks were much stronger, and its speed was higher. Scyther was able to get some strong hits in, but just like Heracross, it was defeated. However, while the damage was being healed by Recover, the Pokemon's stamina was not. These Pokemon were not very physically strong or fit. Ash sent out his Misdreavus, another Pokemon he hasn't used before. He was extremely worried about Misdreavus' performance. However, he soon came to realize that Alakazam's Psychic attacks had little to no effect on the ghost. And when Ash figured that out, he went on the attack with the flurry of Astonish and Hex attacks. Alakazam didn't stand a chance. Next, Ash goes to the nearby Celadon City. Fun fact before we continue, I actually forgot to write in the Celadon Gym when I was writing this originally. And yeah, so this paragraph was added after I finished the script. That's just a little fun fact for you to add into the video, but let's continue. Ash doesn't offend the perfume since he has no reason to go into the perfume in this what if, the perfume shop. I mean, his team should be pretty obvious. Ash uses Ponyta, Charmander, and Staravia in this upcoming battle. Considering Charmander's performance in canon, it's safe to say this battle also goes pretty easily into Ash's favor. Ponyta would struggle slightly due to its poor aim, but makes up with it using Flame Charge. And of course, Staravia has the speed and flight advantage. Ash ends up winning with only Charmander being KO'd, and overall, it being a very good match. So anyway, Ash makes his way to Cinnabar Island. Things more or less go the same as his canon, up until Blaine's gym. Squirtle's defeated, Krabby's defeated, Ponyta's knocked out by Ninetales, or she knocks out the Ninetales, but then she's defeated. So I guess this actually went pretty close to the canon. Ash got washed. Or, blazed? I don't know how you would say that. Fire puns. This leaves Ash pretty embarrassed, though, to know that he nearly lost 3-0. And so he ends up training on the island. Over that training time, Ponyta learns Flamethrower over Ember, which is a lot easier to aim, solving its aiming issue. Krabby evolves into Kingler, and Squirtle learns Hydro Pump. In the rematch, Ponyta defeats Ninetales but loses to Rhydon. Squirtle beats Rhydon but loses to Magmar. And then Magmar loses to the newly evolved and all-powerful Kingler. Moving on even further, Ash makes his way to Viridian City by boat. And of course, the first thing he does is set up the gym. He doesn't actually know what kind of gym it is. After all, it's a pretty secretive gym. Ash in this timeline is pretty early. I said extremely early in this, but the thing is, right, Ash didn't have his boat escapades, or a lot of his escapades, actually, that he did in the show. But he spends a lot more time just staying in one spot and training. And he also did a lot of, like, looping around Kanto. Ash first uses his Ponyta to fight Persian. Giovanni then switches to Rhydon, which Ash uses Kingler to fight. Another easy win. Giovanni would then send out Kangaskhan. Ash sends out his Bulbasaur, but it was easily overpowered by the large motherly Pokemon. Ash then uses his Ponyta, who is able to fight it. During the fight, Ponyta shines brightly and evolves into a Rapidash. Rapidash's Flame Charge is replaced with Flame Wheel, and she easily defeats the Kangaskhan. Giovanni congrats the boy for not only his rare Pokemon, but his victory. He then shoos him out of the gym. It's weird to Ash, but he shrugged it off. Not his problem anymore. Once we're at the league, to change the field order that Ash would get, or even the opponents, it would be random and unjustified. Ergo, up until Richie, which is where the league ended, all of Ash's canon matchups will remain the same. And since Ash is stronger than he is in canon, there really isn't much to cover here. This match on the ice field goes fairly smoothly. Honestly, we can just say Ash started with his Kingler and swept the battle. As for the grass field, that Bellsprout was definitely on some Poke 90X, but I doubted stopping a flame-wheeling Rapidash. We don't see enough of his other two rounds, so we truly can't cover them very well, but Ash is stronger here, so we can just assume he would have won those two. From here, we run into a bit of trouble, because Ash very clearly steamrolls Richie with Rapidash alone. Even if he did KO Rapidash due to some weird sleep rules, Ash has other Pokemon to easily beat Richie. And from what we see, Richie's opponent has a Tentacle, Spearow, or both for his team. So saying Ash beats him is not a stretch at all. But from there, we kind of get into impossibilities. The only other trainer we know about is the one who beat Gary. Gary said that he lost because his opponent got lucky. There is two other ways to look at this. Either Gary was being an arrogant prick, which, let's be honest, is not beyond him at this point, meaning that the trainer he was facing is more skilled than Gary. Or the trainer is around Gary's skill level and he genuinely was lucky, but still around the same skill level. Either way, whether Ash meets him in the finals or semifinals, I really don't see Ash defeating this trainer. Not to mention, we know absolutely nothing about him. Yes, Ash is a competent trainer in this, but he's not Gary Oak. I'm sorry. To further this, even if Ash did make it to the finals, won and fought the Elite Four, I highly doubt he's beating Lance or the Elite Four members. So all in all, Ash is making it to the top 4 at least, and the Elite Four at most. Either way, this would show Ash is an elite trainer, and he might be a bit more famous than he was in canon. As shown with Max, Ash had some level of fame, being in the top 16. Gary would have to respect him even more. After all, Ash made it farther than he did. Ash wouldn't run into the Fearow and the Pidgeotto because Ash would peeve off and electrocute a whole horde of Spearow in this universe. Ash and Gary might throw down, but if Gary is still using Eevee, I doubt that it's going to beat Rapidash. And of course, just like in canon, Ash would receive the GS ball and leave to give it to his mom, Professor Ivy.
I want mommy, I want milk, I want to be held, I want to be comforted. And if you do not do all these things immediately, I will ruin your life.